This activity is facilitated by Always Possible. I'm Lucy Payne, member of the Always Possible team. My teeth are in. A unique consultancy looking at 21st century problem solving through connected conversation. And a little bit of background on the Possibility Club. A call to action for you later in this session is, this is a beginning of a discussion. Actually, when we started at the end of last year, Lisa and I were on a session November, feels like ages ago now, doesn't it? We started this conversation before Christmas. We're continuing it with 4 more webinars, and there's also going to be podcasts, and there's a whole group on the Possibility Club, which you will have had details for when you registered for this event, but we'll be going at the end of this session to continue the conversation on there. And the Aging Well project brings together a host of activities, research, and content. And as part of this, we've set up the community content via a hub, a peer networking session called the Possibility Club. So it's there for you to engage with and interact with, much more sort of a conversation than a lecture. Sign up to the Aging Well Changing the Conversation Circle to join a community of people and organisations interested in discussing, debating and disrupting how we age well. It's a place to share ideas, build collaboration and move towards changing the conversation around how we age. And these online free discussions will give you permission to disrupt the way we think about and do aging well, bringing together cutting edge research, business innovation, grassroots practice in the community and individual lived experience. We're pooling our knowledge to see what the future might look like. If you're open to sharing ideas, building collaborations about living well and living old, digital lives, health, well-being and general learning, then we'd love you to join our new community of thought. So we will share all of that at the end of the session as well. So enough for me in the positioning. I'd like to welcome our panel, and I'm just going to explain who the 4 members of our panel are, and then we shall hear from each of them. We have Dr. Lisa Chen, Deputy Director of the Centre for Social Work and Innovation and Research at the School of Education and Social Work, University of Sussex. I think I just about got that right. Lisa's research is centred on the policy and practice of long-term care, particularly in the forms of community and institutional care for older people, including people with dementia and their formal, informal carers and caring professionals. We also have Charlotte Evans, Story Chaplain. Inspired by the time she spent with her gran, Charlotte founded social enterprise Story Chaplain, which encourages and equips people to use everyday creativity when spending time with people living with dementia through resources and workshops. We also have Brendan Commane, a volunteer for Time to Talk Befriending. Time to Talk Befriending is an intergenerational befriending project which aims to help people aged 65 plus who are socially isolated, chronically lonely, or have limited access or no access to services. And finally, we have Patty Bailick-Smith, who's a Wales-based UK certified NVC, non-violent communications trainer, and is specialised in working with the elderly and the NVC, and has written a book applying the NVC to dementia. It's going to be a fascinating group, and I'd first of all like to welcome Lisa to the stage.
Hi, I just need to share with you my screen. Okay. Hello. Thank you very much, Lucy, and I'm very delighted to participate in the event again. So, like Lucy just kindly introduced, my specialty is to do with aging care. I started my career at age of 21, even before realizing that according to the scientists, people's aging started from age of 21. So most of people are go through the aging process anyway. That I think is a matter for everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the difference between person-centered and the relationship-centered care. And I have been asked to respond to what the science tells us. Okay, so in the UK context, the Care Act 2014, it's a very fundamental act that shaped a very massive change in adult social care and healthcare in England. So the policy has specified focus on the person-centered care and also about relationship-centered care is an approach to achieve person-centered care and the support. So what do you mean by person-centered care? I have reviewed the systematic reviews research in the last few years. So I found apparently about 8 reviews has published in 2012 and 2020. So it's about in less than 1 decade, have a massive research has conducted as regard to person-centered care. And those review has including the reviewing about article in Australia, Canada, Finland, Sweden, the Netherlands, UK, and the USA. So person-centered care actually is quite widespread in the westernized countries. And many definitions of person-centered care, but there's no one universal accepted and used definitions we have found from those asystematic reviews. And we also found, nevertheless, the following element has been discussed in research and practice. It includes see the person beyond their illness, engaging persons in partnership, shared decision-making, and meaningful participation. However, most of the research found that there is no sufficient evidence on person-centered care is effective. The research also found there is a limited evidence on person-centered care has a positive effect on care staff stress, burnout, and job satisfaction. So it's making me wonder what exactly is about person-centered care and whether it's important and relevant to aging care now these days. Therefore, Nolan, Professor Mike Nolan argued that actually relation-centered care is the fundamental if quality of care can be provided. So Mike Nolan and his colleague has developed a framework called the senses framework. And they argue that good care can only be delivered when the senses are experienced by all the groups, which involve older people, families, care staff, and the professionals, as well as the qualifying course students. So those senses are 6 senses. It's including belonging, security, and feeling of significance, feeling of achievement, feeling of purpose, and also last but not least, continuity. So that is the framework as regard to relationship-centered care. So what is the differences between person-centered care and the relationship-centered care? I have found that the differences are, for example, person-centered care is pretty much focusing on the ideology of independencies versus dependencies. So it's quite emphasized on older people's independencies. In contrast, relationship-centered care is emphasized on the interdependencies of all the group involved in care. Person-centered care focus on tasks as in regard to the partnership, active engagement. In contrast, relationship-centered care is focusing more than the task itself. It's emphasized on the interaction, the quality of the time people spend together, but also the meaningful activities that people are engaging. Person-centered care is pretty much being restricted on the institutional relationship. And the fundamental challenge is the concept of caregiver and the care receiver. It's the concept of me and others. Relationship-centered care argue that in order to provide good quality of care, we need to promote the concept of we-ness. Witness means the shared sense of togetherness. We are all together as a human being. Person-centered care focus on individual, the person. And who is a person is a big question. In contrast, relationship-centered care focus and valued. Everyone are important, are relevant in terms of a contribution to good quality of care. So it's explained that person-centered care is normally and often referred to quality of life, while relationship-centered care refer to quality of lives. Nevertheless, person-centered care do acknowledge the importances of a relational quality. And indeed, the relationship between all the people and the relevant others is important if the engagement of any social and the care needs changes can be acknowledged and being addressed. Here are the few quotes through my role and my career as a researcher and as a consultant, as well as an educator. So the first quote is from the Netherlands, which I has conducted my research for my PhD in 2005. And I thought that the quote has a highlight the complexity and the richness, as well as the quality of the care and the care relationship. It's not only about the task. Therefore, we need time. We need time to talk. And it's not just quick to do the washing and to do the dressing. The second quote is from my another research regard to the well-being of dementia working family carers. That family do care for the loved one with dementia and have a paid or unpaid job at the same time. One family said that care and work just makes me feel very depressed, really, because I don't have a life. And so I feel really old before my time. And that reflective on the importances of interdependencies, but also the importances of inclusiveness as regard to everyone in the care environment are equally important and valuable. So they will need to be well supported and not to be left out. The third quote is from my recent work as a consultancy with Time to Talk Befriending. And one of the old people say, my lady, referred to the Befriender, has been so good to me. Her family gave me a lovely birthday, a lovely cake, flowers, and a present. They are like having a family. And that is the quote that we drew it from the time of a COVID lockdown. And it's this kind of sense of belonging that is what Professor Mike Nolan and his colleague referred to. Similarly, from Time to Talk Befriending's volunteer during the lockdown, one volunteer illustrates other volunteers' view. It said that I'm happy to become part of a workforce in helping individuals feel less lonely in their lives. It gives me a great deal of pleasure and happiness helping someone. I have learned a lot. It's lovely to listen and talk to them. And that illustrate again about the senses of purpose, significance, and achievement. The last but not the least is from my student. And I thought I learned a great deal from my student too. And the quote said, the continuity of support is separate from quality of support, I think. people only reject continuity if their advisor is rubbish. So it can refer to the working and the caring environment of the care worker volunteers, as well as care professional. But it also can refer to the care environment in terms of relationship between older people and the relevant other care actors. So it's emphasized and argue that quality of support comes after the continuity. In short, the center of the persons in the center, person-centered care are all the care actors, meaning older people, their families, volunteers, care workers, and the care professionals. Quality of care and the quality of lives is more than being able to see older people beyond their illness, promote shared decision-making and a meaningful participation. The senses that Professor Mike Nolan and his colleague developed are experienced by all the groups involved, interdependently, are fundamental. I hope my talk in some way contribute to today's discussion about what should be at the center of care. And I'm looking forward to the open debate.
Thank you, Lisa. Do you know, I love the six senses. They all feel very relevant to me. Obviously, we're all old because we're over 21. We're all aging, but we all need that. And it made me think about when we decided that multi-generational care wasn't the way forward. When did nursing homes open? Obviously, with these things we get discussion, but it's lots of, we've gone down a certain path, and it's the accepted way that we look after our aging community. But no, that I think the sixth sense is essential to everybody. And I wonder at the moment with loneliness and the joys of the last 11 months, how we are thinking about differently how we look after ourselves, let alone sort of the older people in our families and communities as well. And I thank you, Lisa. That was fascinating. Charlotte, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me this afternoon, and a special thank you to Nora for inviting me. I can't see you on the screen, but I've seen you in the chat, so I'm delighted you're here too. Friends, please do keep using the chat. I love to see people's comments, contributions, reflections.
And locations, we've got Florida, we've got Boston.
I know, I'm so excited. Welcome everyone. I'm sure you'll have your snacks beside you and your drinks, and I love trivia and what you're up to during the day, so please do contribute.
You see the United Nations say an older person is 50 years old.
Yeah, I just spotted that. And actually, Lucy, I was really interested when you said, well, you know, we're all old, we're all over 21.
That's it, it's over.
Steady on. And I think someone recently said that under 65 is a younger person. You know, don't want to get controversial.
They have to keep on changing this metric because we keep on living for longer.
Right, yeah. So it's movable feast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for having me today. I believe I have around 10 minutes, so do chip in if you would like to during my time. My name's Charlotte Evans. I run a social enterprise called Story Chaplain, which encourages everyday creativity in spending time with people living with dementia and carers, and indeed everybody, because people are people, irrespective of their or our diagnosis. Lisa, it's such a joy to go after you because you are so comprehensive and thorough. So I really appreciate that. And I love the phrase you used about interaction over task. I thought that was just spot on. And I loved the quote that you mentioned by the Time to Talk befriending volunteer, who said, "It's lovely to listen and talk." And I thought that is the heart and the beauty of all relationship, that there's a give and take, and not just a one-way street. It's about being with rather than doing to. So friends, in the next 8 minutes or so, I would love to share a little bit about my work, and in particular share a resource with you. But first of all, I'd love to share one of my favourite quotes. It's by Sister Corita Kent, who you may have come across. She was a nun and a pop artist in equal measure. And she said this: "Life is a succession of moments. To live each one is to succeed." And I've been thinking about that quote for years, really. And all of a sudden this week, as I was reflecting on our topic today, I thought about this. Relationships are a succession of shared moments. To connect in each one is to succeed. It's a work in progress, so you're very welcome to make your own contributions to the quote. I'll share it again. Relationships are a succession of shared moments. To connect in each one is to succeed. Or to refer back to Lisa's phrase about interaction over task, perhaps to interact in each moment is to succeed. And I think the smallest unit of relationship is an interaction. And relationships develop always at the speed of trust. So friends, let's think for a little while now about the hallmarks of good relationship that are made up of interactions that in their sum are quality time. So in my social enterprise called Story Chaplain, I do two main things. One, I develop resources, and two, I run workshops. And I would love to share with you now a resource that I have developed. It's a deck of cards. They are called the ingredients cards. If you'd like to find out more, you are very welcome to take a look at my website, storychaplain.com, where there's a page about the ingredients cards. They don't currently exist online, which feels like the opposite of the last 11 months, everyone going onto Zoom. There is no digital version, so for now, they're just a paper copy. And I would love to share with you how the ingredients cards came about. It was really from the realization that good care is about being with rather than doing to. And the cards contain a collection of elements that make for spending quality time with people living with dementia. And I add on the front, and with carers and indeed everybody. So I'm going to share with you now a whistle-stop tour of the ingredients cards. So it's a deck of 11 cards. Each of the cards has a letter, and altogether the cards spell the word ingredients. So an example of the first card, it's about ingredients and ideas that we might bring to our interaction with a person living with dementia. N, let's notice how a person is each day. G, let's go with the flow and not impose a plan that we have on spending time with a person. R, risk assess, but don't worry, it's not dry and boring. It's about thinking about the things that could go right as well as the things that might not go so well. E, oh, I'm reading backwards here, so you'll have to help me out. Environmental clues, what can we see about a person's home or hospital situation that can let us know how they're feeling that day. Of course, this is so much trickier over the telephone, so it might be something about the tone of voice or if we can hear things in the background. D is for distractions. If we call someone, have they got the tennis on in the background? My telephone befriendee often watches the snooker, and I think sometimes she'd rather be watching the snooker than speaking to me, and that's a-okay. I wonder what language that we can use with people that is engaging and open-ended rather than asking folk questions that they might feel shy or awkward about if they're not able to recall an answer that they feel is articulate. Energy levels. How are a person's energy levels? If they're flagging, let's not just plow ahead. N, nature. This is my favourite card. We're not really meant to have favourites, are we? But the invitation is to consider how we can bring the outdoors in, even if a person isn't able to get out and about. And frankly, that's been, well, all of us recently. T is for together. What can we do together rather than doing to a person? A classic and very British example is a cup of tea. Rather than doing something for someone, how is it possible to engage someone that we can do something together with them? And finally, S is for see the person. Whatever a person's diagnosis, come on friends, let's see that person. So whether it's a diagnosis of dementia or arthritis or diabetes, let's keep seeing one another. And there's another picture of a cup of tea, because why not? I'd also like to just do a little shout out to Sarah Edmonds, who's the very talented illustrator who illustrated the cards.
They are wonderful, Charlotte. Absolutely adore those.
They're just so beautiful.
But do you know what? I would use those on friends, on colleagues, especially during lockdown. You could have such great conversation starters, and also ways of just making yourself stop and think. They're gorgeous.
Thank you so much. And they're used in a lot of different contexts, in elder care, in supporting folk living with dementia. I received an order for 5 decks, and I'm always keen to hear how and where the cards are being used. And the lady who ordered them said, they're for my friends. I said, all right, are your friends living with dementia? And she said, no, she said, but they're beautiful. And she said, why not let's have these conversations around the different components of what it means to spend quality time with someone. So just a little bit about where I use the cards. It's a real treat and pleasure for me to work in collaboration with Brighton-based charity Time to Talk Befriending, who we've heard a little bit about already. I run regular workshops online and in person when possible, encouraging the volunteers to nurture and develop quality time with their befriendee. And Brendan, who we'll hear from in a moment, is a Time to Talk volunteer. I wonder, Lucy, how long do I have left? Because I would love finally to invite participants into a short exercise now.
How long will that roughly be?
2 minutes?
Go for it, go on. Because we're going to continue this. If we run out of time to talk here, then everyone has to come and join us at the Possibility Club, so go for it.
Okay, fantastic. So to all of the participants who are logged in, if you have a pen or a pencil, or you can just think about this off the top of your head, I would love to ask you this. As you think about the season we're in now, and depending on where you are in the world, the season might be different. But I'd love to invite you to think about each of the 5 senses and what you like about this season. So first of all, what is a sight that you like about this season? It might be something about the leaves on the trees, or the flowers, or the sky, or the colours.
Crocuses coming through, bright yellow crocuses.
Oh, good, yes, and I like the purple ones as well.
Yeah.
So that's a sight. Second, what's a sound that you love about this time of year? Primroses, thank you, Marilyn. I love to see your responses, so do pop those in the chat. So first of all, a sight, and then what's a sound that you love this time of year? I can hear seagulls all around the year, but what especially is a sound that you love this time of year? Oh, we've got fresh snow.
Oh, the birds. I agree with birds in the morning. They're so loud at the moment. They're so excited, aren't they?
They're excited. We're excited. Next of all, what's a smell that you love this time of year? It's not quite freshly mown grass, is it? But we're heading towards that time.
It's very fresh. Now it's warmer and you open the windows and they're lovely fresh air.
Fresh washing.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just such a treat, isn't it? I even like seeing other people's washing on the line. A taste. What about a taste? Oh, someone's already there ahead of me. Freshly baked bread. Just perfect. Well, that's nice every time of year, isn't it? So a taste. I was going to say hot cross buns, but we're not quite at Easter, and I don't
almost think chocolate, yeah.
We're almost there. We're almost there. And finally, what is a feel that you love this time of year? Ice cream on the beach. Yeah, I suggested that to my husband, and he said, "Steady on." He said, "We're not there yet." So, friends, the follow-up invitation is to ask you this: each of those things that you've identified, do you do them alone, or would you rather do them or enjoy them with someone else? One of my favorite all-time C.S. Lewis quotes is that Joy is made complete when it's shared. So each of these things that we love about the season, can we share those things with another person? For one person to say to another, can you smell that grass? Just listen to those birds. And that's about the quality of interaction and relationship that makes our life so much richer. Friends, thank you very much.
Charlotte, that was brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Oh, we've got a massive smile on our face now, haven't we? Thinking about all those things that we love experiencing.
Thank you.
Brendan, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And as you can see, everyone, Charlotte's really inspiring. And the ingredient cards are amazing, really. So, yeah. Do you want me to start talking about them straight away, or give a little bit of an introduction to?
A little bit more of an intro about who you are and what you do, and to kind of paint the picture.
So, my name's Brendan Commane. And I've got an interest in dementia for two reasons. I was up until between 2014-15, the main carer for my aunt who had an official diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And in 2015, after a lot of issues, I had to make the very difficult decision to put her into a care home. And if anyone's sort of been in that position, you know that that's something that can really, that you have to consider very carefully. It's a very difficult decision. But so even though she was in a care home, you don't stop caring. And you're very much part of her life, or the one that you care for life is ongoing when they're in a care home. So that has been ongoing. And professionally, I'm doing a PhD on dementia, and it's in a way related to what Lisa was talking about, person-centered and relationship care. I'm looking very much at the environment and how that impacts on people with dementia as well. So my research is looking at visual art as a means to connect people with dementia, engage in conversations, bring about a greater sense of well-being as well. And with that, I'm also looking at a soft textile item like maybe a teddy bear or a rug or some sort of soft toy that can bring about security, engagement, and a sort of feeling of comfort as well. And with my aunt, she's very firmly in the very late stages of dementia now, but that's been one of the ways I've actually been able to have good in the moment conversations with her through that teddy bear that's very much part of her. She's very connected to it. So I'm sort of researching the visuals and the sort of those sensory aspects as well around the whole environment. And families, carers, I'm hoping to get totally involved in this. It was meant to be based in in care homes, but obviously that's not happening now. So if anyone wants to get involved in my research, that would be brilliant as well. So going on to befriending, I approached the Befrienders in June last year, and I was accepted in July. You have to go through a process, obviously. And then I was given my befriendee in August of last year. He's a man of 89 years of age. He has some medical issues, and he has visual impairment as well. I think he's considered actually blind, but he can see silhouettes and blurs around the television and that sort of thing. So the ingredients cards have been really interesting for me because I can't actually ask him to read them with me or talk with me through some of those. But what I have found really useful with those, and I've just written a little list here, is it's really helped me bridge any conversational gaps when there's a bit of a hesitation in the moment, or if the conversation perhaps goes a little bit flat, I quickly look back at the ingredients cards and I might come across one, for example, like this one, where there's a radio, and I'll say to my befriender, what music have you been listening today? What radio programs have you been listening today? He's a very, in his earlier years, he was a great sportsman. So I know he listens to radio broadcasts on sports. So it encourages that sort of conversation as well. It keeps the conversation very fresh and positive, which is brilliant and really helpful. And it allows us to cover topics that we probably never would cover. Things like what clothes you're wearing, how do you, what are you cooking? He still manages to cook as well, which is amazing considering his eyesight. Where have you traveled in the world? Just little prompts are really, really helpful. He does talk a lot about reminiscence, and the cards do lend itself to reminiscence, but I also tried very much to have in the moment conversations as well. So he's very aware of what's going on around him at a given point in time. And the conversations through those cards become very focused and meaningful as well. And a real bonus with the cards is my befriender has told me that his wife, according to him, has dementia. It's not diagnosed, but it's been an opportunity for me to use those cards to think about how he could speak to his wife around some of the issues that she's struggling with. I've got the impression sometimes that he's become a little bit frustrated with her memory loss or perhaps her change in behavior. And as Charlotte mentioned earlier, I was talking about keeping conversations very open-ended, trying not to use conversations where she has to try and recall and use her memory too much, or conversations where she has to make predictions. So very much open-ended conversations I'm encouraging him to use with his wife, and the cards really help with that as well. And so it's sort of benefiting, as they would, and as Charlotte pointed out, both him and his wife as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm just trying to talk with him about how not to become so specific and get too caught in detail, but talk very generally with his wife and try and build up some really meaningful in the moment conversations with her as well. And the cards lend itself very much to that. And just going back in terms of my research and in terms of with Derek as well, my befriendee, I can't visit him now, obviously, because of the pandemic, but when I can, I will. And that will also help me to look at things that, because he doesn't have a carer as such, and things like, what sort of things have I noticed around the environment? Are there, has it changed over time? Has things been left unkept? And they're all the sorts of things that really help build up a really important and meaningful picture around how well they're coping with dementia or themselves at a given time. So for me, the environment's really important. It's important for my research as well. And the cards have been really fantastic to encourage in the moment and really positive and meaningful conversations.
Thank you, Brendan. No, I think you're bringing that fresh perspective to his life as well. At least he can talk to you about his frustrations with his wife. Again, we're not really taught how to deal with having watched my grandmother lose my grandmother, sort of mentally or physically. She said we're not taught how to cope with that, and it can become frustration and you can be upset and you can be sad, but it's the person is still there. It's how you help them have a good quality of life. She had a group of carers, so she was very sport. She had a wonderful world being read to. Charlotte, very similar to you. She's an artist, so it's everything, the visual, the stimulation, and just, you haven't lost that person. They just need you in a different way. But no, it sounds like fascinating, very satisfying, but hard to do remotely. I do, as you say, I think a lot of that relationship is built in person. So it'd be lovely in a few months' time when you can see him.
Yeah.
Finally, Patty, thank you for joining us. Good to meet you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having this conversation. You know, this is something that has been on my heart for a long time, and I suppose the reason why I'm here is because I worked as a caregiver, as a carer, for about 5 years. By then I already knew nonviolent communication. It's something that I have been trained in before. It's a set of skills that allow us have these conversations that you were referring to, Lucy, because, you know, how often we are trying to keep people entertained all the time, right? And when you are aging, as we are all aging, there will be things that we encounter in our lives that perhaps we also need to address rather than distract us from it, right? So this is perhaps my contribution here around that. So what happened to me was that when I came to care, the training I have received was, I would say, pretty irrelevant to what I was actually facing. So a lot of theory, slides about brain, and manual handling skills, and the actual difficulties in care were outbursts of anger, grief, loneliness. No one taught me how to deal with that. So but thankfully, I worked with other carers, and I have learned so much from them, as well as my NVC trainers. And here is our baby. We created this resource for anyone really who wants to deepen very topics that we are discussing here today, how to be in relationship with someone. Here specifically with dementia, I will say that, even though I know that we probably all know that, but I'm going to state it, not every old person will have dementia, and not every person with dementia is old. So there are people with dementia in their 30s, and there are people in their 90s who never had dementia and probably never will have dementia. So, you know, old age and dementia is not the same adjective as it's worth to a person. However, you know, this is not a secret that, of course, many elderly people are struggling with dementia, and not only them, it is also us. Because as I make the point in, I'm arguing the case that dementia affects all of us, not only one person's brain. And here is back to what Lihasa was saying about, you know, this is the we in relationship rather than, you know, I love the Charlotte's, the being rather than being doing too, right? The kind of the idea of caregiving, which is like you deliver the caregiving like one way from a caregiver to the person who is cared for. And there is so much problem with that. So I would like to state a little bit of that. And, you know, what I was checking out, Always Possible and this hub for interchange of ideas I love, feeling invited, but perhaps I can voice some of the ideas have been in the back of my mind that aren't in a book. So everything else that maybe the major ideas are in a book, and I would love to use this opportunity to talk about things that aren't in a book that perhaps we can actually talk about here. I'm very interested in that, but I'll start with some key ideas. So first of all, the idea of connection in relationships. So we talk about interaction, we talk about spending time with elderly people, but that's not always possible. And this year has proved it, right? It's not always possible to spend time, to be physically with someone. I would like to argue, and actually that is not the statement, I would like to invite everyone who is here to check in their hearts and see whether you are now, right now, feeling connected to someone precious in your life. If you are feeling connected to someone precious in your life who is not physically present anywhere near you, maybe you would like to raise your hand, and everyone on chat, would you like to raise your hand as well? So there is perhaps for many of that, yes, some sense of connection. And sometimes when we are looking into our heart, we find ourselves feeling lonely. As I hear one of the participants sharing, thank you for sharing that. This is something what we don't like to talk about, right? We want to appear as we are so, social and all of that. And perhaps sometimes in the depths of our heart, we are actually feeling lonely. So the sense of connection, how can we cultivate it? How can we nurture it? It seems to me that relationship is an alive thing. It needs nurturing, like any living thing needs feeding, needs nurturing. And the ideas we've heard before, that needs time, that needs cultivation, of course, all of this. How can we have connection though that doesn't require physical presence? And of course, that will be based on some sense of interaction. But I would like to bring here ideas from nonviolent communication, which base the idea of connection that is being recognizing each other's needs, respecting each other's needs. So here needs doesn't necessarily mean my need to drink or my need to go to the loo. It is much, much broader. It's my need for companionship, my need for fun, my need for space, my need for safety. All of these are inherently shared in our relationship. So this is about recognizing shared needs and valuing. So here, violence would be to deny these needs. So nonviolent communication is about appreciating these needs, acknowledging them. And what is very important that in care situation, we need to acknowledge them on both sides. So it's not enough to just acknowledge the needs of the person who needs care. We also need to acknowledge the needs of the person who is looking after them. So the caregiver, which is very tricky because the caregivers themselves very often don't recognize their own needs. So here it is, the first step is to do self-empathy. So it is interesting that the real and depth of connection starts with ourselves. And I get what we were saying earlier, let's get together, let's put more time into spending time together. I would like to argue that equally we really need time on our own with ourselves, with our own hearts, and know what's in them, because that's the way to connect. We can only connect on heart level. There is no other way to connect. If we don't know what's in our hearts, we won't be able to do that. So if you are interested in that and you would really like to explore what would that mean to reach connection on a heart level that is not dependent on physical presence, I will send you to my book and to my website, which you can check out. But here is the time to share some ideas that I have been having, and I was longing to have someone to talk to about these things. So I would choose this opportunity to do that. So first of all, and this very much connects to what Brendan and Charlotte were saying about we need time. And what does that mean? We need to stop glorifying busyness. And our culture is doing that. We are glorifying being busy to the point that we are also trying to keep busy everyone around us and ourselves. And then when we are growing old, we keep trying to do the same. And then, okay, the checklist. Are we feeling connected doing that? Am I keeping busy with other people, and am I actually reaching a sense of connection with them? Because if not, I will be hungrier for more and more and more activity that is never going to satisfy the sense of loneliness that is in my heart. So yes, I really think that this is our own responsibility. Am I glorifying busy? Otherwise, will I have time? I was wondering, maybe you would be interested to know from a caregiver point of view what is actually really helpful for a caregiver, how to support them. If we want to acknowledge the we, how can we support the caregivers who are giving that time to a person, elderly person, a person with dementia, whoever, giving them reliable, frequent, well, maybe not frequent, it can be once a week, can be every fortnight, can be once a month, but a reliable, repeatable break. So as a carer, this is something that I often came across, that often family members who would employ you, they would go, why do you need a break? You're not doing anything all day long. They are just sitting all day long with that person drinking tea. That's people's idea of what care means. So that is a request, a very doable thing. Do you know anyone in your community, in your family who is providing care? And if you want to support them, tell them that every Monday at 1 o'clock you will come and you will spend an hour with the person or 2 hours, and do it every Monday. Be reliable. Don't do it every now and then, because that is not really helping. So that is one doable thing that perhaps you could do. I would like us really to appreciate the individuality of aging. One heartbreaking thing for me witnessing people, elderly people, would be news with 90-year-olds cycling across England. And this idea that everyone's supposed to be able to do that, or 102 still able to do this. People age so differently. Some people can't cycle in their 70s. Some people can, I don't know, go on a round the world trip in their 90s. We are very different. Some people actually may want to have quiet old age, whereas the families, everyone is trying to give them entertain and do something. Come on, like, don't waste your life. Maybe actually a quiet elderly time is part of aging well, or having a choice of how you want to age. Perhaps this is important. I could add a couple of more things, but just wanted to check with you, Lucy. I know that we are running a little.
We can continue the conversation, don't worry. I think that's a really good point you made there about asking someone what good looks like for them, what aging well looks like for them, and having, because none of us like acknowledging the fact we age. None of us we're all scared of dementia. We're scared of what might happen, because there's a certain elements we are out of control of. But ask people, as you say, what does good look for you? Don't say, back to what Lisa was saying, don't put everybody in a box and treat everybody the same. Go on, Patty, go for your final thoughts. Go on, and then we can continue the conversation in the Possibility Club then.
Okay, so just the last thought is that we need to learn how to relate to people who have cognitive disorders or incapacities, impairments, whether dementia or any other, because that's something what I've been seeing is that the family members, for example, that often come, they would just literally don't know how to engage with someone who doesn't keep the conversation in the same way. So yes, Charlotte's idea of ingredients cards, great. I have, from my own side, to offer on my website, you will find a series of questions you can ask about the inner world, the feelings, the grief, the dark side that we don't want to talk about, that we can address in a way that does not require using memory, or like Brendan was pointing out, right, or like not heavy on cognitive, but heavy on sensual, on present based. So there are some ideas there.
But we need tools to help us with that, Patty, don't we? It's again, we just see, I go back to that's not my gran anymore. Where's she gone? She's living in Canada back in her teens, and she has little sentient moments, but she's not the same woman, but she still is so overjoyed to see you, even if sometimes she doesn't quite know who you are. And she wants to have that relationship. She wants to eat cake with you or do whatever you did as a child, but we aren't empowered to do that. So we think, oh, it's difficult, it's awkward. We'll just get them out of the way. So little tools like Charlotte Yui cards that just make you think, okay, I can be in control of this. I don't quite know what I'm doing, but I've got a tool here that'll help me feel a little bit better about engaging, because we're worried about getting it wrong. We get anxious, we get upset. They get anxious and upset because the conversation is difficult. Because you say, Brendan, gentleman maybe can't articulate something, or he can't remember something. It becomes awkward, and then we just don't want to do it again.
That's it.
Because nobody enjoyed it. So we go, oh, well, that was a terrible idea. Well, actually, as you say, that consistency and finding little things like bringing a crocus in with you, or the daffodil in with you when you come to a meeting. Everybody smiles at those first blooms in spring, don't they? How can we just bring little pieces of light? We're not trying to fix it. We can't fix this. This is the problem. As humans, we want to fix somebody, and we can just make them a little bit happier. Oh, Patty, do you have a final thought for us before we got a couple of good questions?
Yeah, perhaps we can be a little bit happy, or we can be sad together.
Yeah, totally.
I don't want to exclude the range of feelings and only look at the bright ones, because we feel more than the bright feelings. And if the person I'm visiting is really sad, perhaps my role isn't to cheer them up. Perhaps it's me to hold their hand and cry together.
Yeah, be a release.
Mm-hmm.
We've all needed that over the last few months. No matter what age we are, we all need people to just talk through how we're feeling, to be listened to. That's the verbal equivalent of a hug, isn't it, really? We have a fantastic question from Mauro Torre, a research fellow at the University of Surrey. Lisa has highlighted key areas essential for understanding of caring for the aged. However, it looks like there is no clear cut or fine line between the two, person and relationship centered care. I'd like to therefore propose a mixed approach depending on the circumstances. So Lisa, one for you. Would you agree that a mixed approach can be practical and realistic?
I think those two are interlinked. There is no relationship without persons. So that's why that's why it's so difficult to have a clear cut. So I think it also remind me, while Patty was talking, it remind me about what my mother-in-law said about marriage. Marriage is part of a different one type of relationship, and she said marriage is not just a marriage that have a wedding. Marriage need to work on it. So the relationship really need to work on it. And it's like I say, it's interdependencies. So I'm not too keen on the phrase of a caregiver or care receiver. I think a lot of my social work students, and including myself, who go into social work careers, our initial intention is to helping people. And why? Because it makes us happy. So I think it's a caring relationship that is so dearing. It's a dependent one the other. Is not one is a giver, one is a receiver.
Do you think it does go back to we're trying to find a solution to this? We're trying to fix it rather than educate ourselves on it. Charlotte, let me pop that one to you. Are we all searching for a solution to a problem that we can't fix aging? We're obsessed with this magic pill that we never get old, aren't we?
Absolutely, and I think we have this false ideal in society of and goal of independence, when actually we weren't born independent, we were born dependent. And I think across the life course, we need one another. And it's very easy to start sounding like a cliche, but we do need one another. But so much of society is designed in a way that we might feel that we don't need one another. So things like self-service checkout, it's all very well, but we still need the supermarket. Someone still stacked the shelves, but we kind of create this false reality. And when I worked in social care, very often people said to me, "You don't understand. I've been very independent throughout my life." And I think, gosh, yes, isn't that the myth we all tell ourselves? And very often we are much keener to give and to help others than we are to receive. So a question I ask in a lot of my workshops is, what are you really good at and what do you love being asked to do? And then equally, what's something that you find tricky and you need a bit of help with? Let's all be in the habit of asking one another for help and also offering help to others. Because we're all good at some stuff and not good at other stuff.
I feel this has been the first year where you've asked someone if they're okay, they'll tell you no. Lockdown and COVID and the horrible roller coaster we've all been emotionally, it's the first time when you said to somebody, "How are you doing?" I've had people say, "Well, actually, now you come to mention it, I'm really struggling." It's the first time when asking for help has been perceived as okay, which is awful, isn't it? The amount of people we speak to who don't have sounding boards, who don't have friends to release valves, people who just help them when they're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're supposed to be these, superpowers that we're going to get through life without needing them. As you say, we're all dependent. And also, look, we used to have multi-generational living, didn't we? Where we all did look after each other. Suddenly, we changed the culture. "Oh, you're not okay now. We're going to pop you over there in a nursing home. We're going to get rid of you. You're now a problem. We'll put you in a different box." Whereas it used to be we'd look after. That dependency would come back. That's right. Yeah. I have a question for Patty in the chat. Do you think that beginning to have conversations around aging from an early age, young people onwards, would merit and help towards preparing to age well? I wonder if thinking about what is meaningful to us and preparing in this way might be useful, and also thinking about conversations about death and dying, which so many people find difficult, but it is a reality of life.
Yeah, thank you. This follows on really from what Charlotte was saying, let's look at the assumptions we're making about ourselves at the moment, like, for example, that I am independent or my type of relationships I have with people, you know, what are they based on, you know, and if all my relationships are based on work, you know, how would that then reflect my relationship in elderly age years when suddenly all my friends are gone because I'm no longer working, that kind of idea, right? But there was something else, but it's escaped my mind.
Should we teach people from an early age about getting old? The thing we never talk about.
And death, you mentioned death, thank you very much. It does kind of sound like it relates to old age, but does it? It kind of relates to any age, really. You know, there is this, I have a friend who does this work on really making us aware that our culture is looking at death as failure. So like when someone dies, you will need to find someone responsible for
They've lost
death.
the battle. That's how we talk about it, isn't it? You know,
It is about the battle themselves, but also that we make someone responsible for it. So, oh, I don't know, the carer didn't do the good risk assessment of the property, or I don't know, someone didn't do the right medication, and like someone failed somewhere, therefore this person died. And this is a major flaw in our thinking. Death is natural, and medicalization of death, right? That if someone is unwell, we take them to the hospital. I actually personally, in my family, I know people who have died because of the loneliness of the hospital environment, especially during COVID, not so much through other conditions. So there is something about us being together. But Lucy, I wanted to mention something, and I know it kind of went. You meant, you know, that we send people to care homes because we no longer, you know, we no longer care for them in our families. And I just wanted to, with care, approach that, because I know for any carer who is here, it's a nerve-wracking major decision to decide to, you know, that there is a point in care where someone reaches the stage that it is actually requiring 24-hour care. That didn't happen in traditional societies. In traditional societies, all societies, people peacefully died when it was their time. Sometimes I wonder whether we are living longer or whether we are actually dying longer nowadays. This is something I wonder, because we are able to keep people alive for a long time. And I know as a carer, there is no way you can provide 24-hour care for someone as a one person.
We put my gran into care when it came to that. She had a wonderful group of carers for many, many years, and the last 2 months of her life, it's very brief, she got to a stage where she wasn't safe to be by herself. As you say, it was a very last minute thing. I was being a bit controversial because it's kind of like, again, dying well is a conversation, isn't it? Having a good death.
Yes.
And which is, again, we just don't talk about this. It's one of those topics we get terribly British about it, and I think we should plan for it. And it's not about having a pension, and you know, it's not about that, is it? It's looking after yourself and doing what you can, and having difficult conversations. Someone say early conversations will facilitate opportunities including individuality, one social solution, or song will not fit all. It's dismal to see elderly people in care homes who are expecting to sing World War II songs when they were barely born then. You can't group. We all get very offended, don't we, by, you know, Gen Z, millennials, whatever it may be, grouping a whole age group into like one category. It's celebrate their individuality. And again, Charlotte, that's what your cards are doing. Is that let's have conversations about who you are, not, oh, you're 89 and Brendan, you're a gentleman, therefore these are the things that you're going to like.
And also who are you, who am I today, and who are you today? You know, all those classic questions of, you know, why isn't she eating boiling the bag cod anymore? She used to really enjoy it. You say, well, has she had it for 3 weeks in a row? Like, but maybe she used to like it. Let's meet each person as they are today. And Lucy, as you said, really asking people, how are you, beyond the platitudes. And you know, since the start of the pandemic, I find myself messaging friends saying, how are you this week? No, how are you? How are you? You know, I'm feeling flat. How are you? And really expecting, because we know what kind of context we're living through, and inviting that honesty. A phrase I use a lot in my work is not aging well at all. It's honest aging. And I loved what Patty said about a quiet old age. And it was really funny because as you said that, I thought, I like the sound of a quiet old age.
Do you know
Without
what?
shame.
A really good analogy is, do you remember you'd have like friends of your parents, whatever, when you were a kid, who knew you when you were 6, and they'd come and see you a few years later, and they'd bring that thing you loved when you were 6. They go, oh, I remember you loved jelly babies. And why are you doing that to your grandmother? They used to moan when your grandparents would do it to you potentially. They'd buy in this special cake, and you get to a certain age, you're like, I don't really like that anymore, but they'd always buy it and you felt bad. They might be nodding and smiling with a boil in the bag fish going, really don't like this, but there we go. They're cooking it for me. I'll nod and smile because they're not being asked, what would you like? Again, yeah, obviously you're old, you must like bland food. Actually, I love an Indian. Come on, let's just not put everybody into the box, isn't it? Have a discussion. What would you like to eat? Food, back to that sensory experience. Going and cooking for someone, it's lovely, isn't it? My mother loves that. I'm going to do a garden next week. It's just those little things that you're part of their life, and the relationship is nurtured by that, isn't it? Oh, I like that. So Dan is that's very true. Dad was a Rolling Stones fan, and he's able to listen to Vera Lynn. I mean, it's just perfect, isn't it? But celebrate individuality. Each their own. Now, we are going to continue this conversation, and there's so much more we could be talking about. But I also do need to highlight that this is part of a series that we're doing. This is the first. I'm going to grab my notes so I get the right ones. So on the 10th of March, we've got how co-creation can improve products and services for older people. On the 27th of April, we've got can disruptive innovation help people to age better. And on the 9th of June, so close when the world will be back to normal, hopefully, how can we turn the problem, which we've talked about today, of aging into the most promising opportunity of the 21st century? Because it's a problem, isn't it? But it's a problem we all go through. It's one we all hope to go through, actually. And Patty, you were saying about death being a thing, we all hope to get old. So why do we don't do so little to prepare for it in a productive way and help those people who've been fortunate enough to become old, who've lived until 90? I can only imagine what your gentleman has seen, Brendan, and actually let's enjoy that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just wanted to go back a bit into the conversation about, reminiscence has its place, and I'm not sort of disputing that at all. But for me, living in the moment and having those in the moment conversations and activities where there's no right, no wrong, there's no stress, are really, really important to make those people feel very valued and worthwhile, and that they're doing and participating in something that is amazing. And I think that's really, really important. It develops their self-worth, their self-esteem. Other people recognize it. It promotes conversations as well. And I think that for me is the key to really try and encourage those sort of in the moment issues.
I think it's quite offensive that we just assume that someone of a certain age is forever living in the past. Ask them their opinion about whatever topic is on the news. You're saying your gentleman listening to his sport. Ask him what he thinks about the latest Arsenal team or whatever it is. He's got opinions about these things. Ask him if he used to be a keen gardener, what he would have been planting right now. Or what he's going to be planting on. As you say, make it in the moment. Why are they suddenly unable to keep up with the news of the day? They've got televisions, radios, they've got brains, they've got all that context and experience. And we sometimes fail to be confident enough to ask about that. I think sometimes it's confidence as an uneducated person, which I still, I have an elderly, my grandmother died a couple of years ago, but my mum is disabled, and there's still topics you feel uncomfortable talking about, even with your own mother. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And I remember I did some art research with a group of carers, I think it was 3 years ago, and it was all their husbands and wives, and they were just suddenly put into that position where they had to suddenly care for their husband or wife because they had a diagnosis of some sort of dementia, and they felt so inadequate and poorly prepared for that. And I was really shocked. But what did come out of that, which was really amazing, the opportunity to talk through those issues and speak through those conversations around how are you feeling, because she's feeling like that, he's feeling like that, and they're all feeling very similar. And it was a great opportunity to just feel the sort of connections and the security within those conversations as well.
Yeah, we're all in it together. Now, my father-in-law was very worried he had dementia. He's got Parkinson's, so a different challenge. But the worry of dementia and that big, it feels overwhelming as a term as to where, you know, what he felt it might be doing to him. He'd already made himself quite ill, thinking that's what he had. So when he got the Parkinson's diagnosis, at least that's something he can now constructively engage with. It's not wonderful by any means, but it just means it's something that he feels more proactive about dealing with. But again, having all this through lockdown with, you know, him and his wife trying to work out what that means. Luckily, they haven't got the Dr. Google, which doesn't help a lot in these circumstances, is it? So they're trying to self-diagnose, but it's getting positive support as a carer and as somebody who's scared about what a diagnosis might mean. And again, the problem is it's very rarely linear as a journey. Well, we're going to take this over to the Possibility Club. Dan, can you pop the, as if my mind was being read by Dan. Now look at him, he's so good. There's the link to the Possibility Club. We're going to stay here and meet you basically over there virtually, so in chat. So thank you all so much for dialing. Thank you, panel. You've all been wonderful.